Hey guys, it's Katie Cakes here, and today I'm going to be doing my April wrap-up. I know there is still today, and I am going to start a book, but I'm likely not going to finish it because I have a bunch of sewing projects that I need to finish right now. So, yeah. But I did manage to finish 18 books. I say finish because I DNF'd 3 of them, so technically I finished 15 books. Yeah, this was my TBR for what was left when I started the Owls readathon, and I only ended up having 4 more. So I didn't do too bad. So yeah. Like usual, I'm gonna show you my Goodreads words on it, thoughts on it, I guess I should say. And then I'll add more if I need it. And quite a few of them had to go back to the library as well, so I don't have them anymore. So the first book I read this month was Some Girls Bite by Chloe Neal. I did not finish this book. I DNF'd it. Not really sure when I DNF'd it. It was before half the book was over. I think I only read like 3 or 4 chapters of it. I couldn't get into it at all. I really wanted to, but it wasn't working for me. So I DNF'd it. My thoughts on it were, I can't get into this book. I wanted to, and I tried really hard, but I just can't. I've been reading it now for 5 days, which is a really long time for me to read one book, and I'm giving up. I don't like this book at all, nothing is happening, and I've decided I'm done. I finished half the book, and the only thing that happened was that Merritt was turned into a vampire and wasn't happy about it. I will not be continuing this series. So I guess I did finish half of the book. And then the next book I read was Throne of Glass, the Assassin, and the Pirate Lord, which is point 1 of the series. I thought it was a pretty good novella and a great way to start the story and tell us who the main character is. However, I think the main character we follow needs a little attitude adjustment sometimes. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Assassin and the Desert, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. It was a good enough story. I'm interested in finishing the novellas so I can decide if I actually want to continue the series or not. That's literally all I said about that book. And then I read The Assassin and the Underworld, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, this was the book that I decided I was going to finish the series until it didn't interest me anymore, so. And then I read Red Riding Hood, which I did own. But you guys can't see that at all. I did own it, but I really didn't like it. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars, so I gave it to Fair's Fair. I traded it for other books. I should have known that I wouldn't like it because I didn't like the movie. But yeah. What did I write about this book? This book was horrible, boring, and confusing to read. It switched between who was telling the story so much that it became confusing. I thought I was only following the sister that was still alive, but apparently not. They also never tell you who the wolf was, just who it might have been. I feel like it could have been written so much better than it was. Back to Fair's Fair with this book. So, that one didn't do very well. I also should have DNF'd it, but I read it, so then I read Soulless. I DNF'd this book as well. I hated it. I tried. This one, I know that I only got about 4 or 5 chapters into it. It just, I couldn't do it. Like, from the first chapter, I was just like, no, this is not for me. But I really wanted to try it, and yeah. So then, I read My Best Friend's Stepfather for Opal Carew. Now, if you guys remember me talking about this book, I had thought that it was about this woman that was best friends with someone and ended up wanting her stepfather. Like her best friend's stepfather. This book was interesting. I will never read it again, and I gave it back to Fair's Fair because it was horrible. If you do read this book, go into it knowing that there's some places that are probably going to make you twitch. For instance, I'm going to spoil this here, so if you don't want to hear it, wait until I hold up the next book. From what I remember of this book, this woman, I don't remember her name, she was dating this guy, the stepfather, and they were fine, and then they broke up. I can't remember why, because I've read so many books since then, but they broke up, and then she started dating this other guy, from her office, and they were fine, and then the stepfather came back into the town, and she ended up running into him and falling for him again while still dating this guy. So it's a love triangle, but it has a pretty big twist. Hello, baby boo. So then, I don't remember exactly how, but the two men end up meeting, and it comes out that they used to date, and then they end up all being together, and the stepfather, his daughter ends up forcing herself on him when he's sleeping, and he thinks it's the chick, and ends up getting pregnant, and it's the stepfather's. So the couples, like the trilogy of couples, end up adopting that baby. Like, it's messed up. It was not a good book. Not a good book. But I'll read you what I read about it, or what I wrote about it. This book was interesting, to say the least. It shocked me and made me question what I was reading. Near the end, it was a bad soap opera that couldn't figure out what to do. So just throw everything they could think of into it. I hated the fact that the book was great. I hated the fact that the book was great with the love triangle thing going on. But then they brought in this male-male romance thing, and it just didn't fit. I couldn't picture either of the characters being bisexual, so it just ended up ruining the rest of the story for me. And then the author also threw in the fact that the stepdaughter is obsessed with her stepdad and makes a move on him while he's with Ashley. That's a girl's name. It's just wrong. And then if that's not enough, there we also find out that the stepdaughter also snuck into the stepdad's room and fucked him while he was sleeping and thinking it was Ashley. And then to add to it, she also becomes pregnant with his kid. This book is just wrong. Up until they started all the crazy shit, I liked it. This is the part of the book. That is the part of the book that is getting 3 out of 5 stars for me. The rest, it gets 1 star because it is unbelievably unnecessary. But I then switched my review back to 1 star because I didn't want it to have the satisfaction of getting 3 stars. So, next I read Cocky Bastard by Penelope Ward. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this story. It was so good. I devoured it in a couple hours, and I couldn't put it down, but forced myself to in the beginning of part 2 because I had to go to sleep. I most definitely will be looking into other books by these authors. I do believe I read that one for Read on the Cover as well. And then I read Ride Hard by Laura Kay. I did find out that this is a trilogy. Sorry. And I will eventually read them, but they don't actually like go together. They're one of those series that are like standalones within each other. So eventually I will get the other ones and read them, but not right now. Whoa, okay. So, I enjoyed this book. It was good enough, and I was able to get interested in the characters. However, I hated the sex scenes. It just felt awkward to read them the way they were written. I also didn't like the way the author wrote some chapters. It was weird, and when Dare said those things at the end about not caring about Haven to make himself not look like he was in love in front of his friends, that made me so mad. Own up to how you feel, or you don't deserve to feel that way. If my fiancé ever did that to me, I would be pissed and make his ass grovel for me to even give him the time of day to apologize, because that was cruel and unnecessary. I love the way the book ended. To me, the story is over, so I'm going to close the chapter and move on to another book. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Assassin and the Empire. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this story and felt as though I got to know the main character a lot better, her personality and how she thinks. And now that she's mad, I'm sure she'll be pushing to get revenge. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting story to read from here on out. Can't wait. So I didn't have a lot to say about that one. And then I read Mr. Tonight by Kendall Ryan. This book was really good. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I would read it again. I couldn't put this book down. Sorry. I started it last night, and I read 3/4 of the book before I realized what time it was, and that I had to go to bed. I also loved how the author showed us a little insight into how their lives ended up. I will most definitely be buying more books by this author. My only downside was how the paragraphs were all separated from each other. That bugged me a lot, and I was hoping it's only this book that she does it in. So, Mr. Tonight is about this chick that I do believe she just broke up with a guy. Or no. She doesn't like relationships. She wants to just have one night stands. That's what she does. And this guy is a father to, I think she's 4 years old. The mother abandoned them, and they both end up at this bar, and they're both hitting on looking at each other. So eventually she comes over and she tries to pick him up, and they end up going back to his place, and then his 4-year-old daughter walks in to ask why the woman is hurting her dad. But that's not the best part. So she runs away, and then the next day she was supposed to be meeting her landlord, or her new landlord, to potentially get this house. Turns out to be this guy. It's above, it's unattached and above his house. So yeah, I thought it was really good. I loved it. It was great. And then I read Blush by Opal Carew. I gave that 4 to 5 stars. I finished it really fast and again didn't want to put it down. These are the types of books that made me fall in love with Opal's reading. I can't wait to read another book by her. The only criticism I have for this book is that sometimes it was too repetitive and it didn't make sense when you were trying to picture a scene in your head from the page. Other than that, it was a great story. And then I read Flirting with Fire by Piper Rain, which I got from Romance Real Book Box. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Another great read. I was captivated by the story and I read it in one day, between doing other things, because I couldn't wait to find out what would happen. I also plan to read the remaining books in the series. Hopefully it will be about the other two brothers finally falling in love. This book was well written and I enjoyed every second of it. So this one was kind of another one like Mr. Tonight, sort of. So him and the main girl, what's her name? Maddie. They used to go to high school together. She was a nerd and he was like a football player. So he was really popular. And then her best friend was also really popular because she was a cheerleader. And they all end up going to this party. Maddie's not drinking because she's a designated driver for her friend who is supposed to be spending the night at her house. Eventually she goes looking for her friend at the party because she's disappeared for like an hour now. And she ends up running into this guy. I believe his name is Marco. Mario. And he asks her for a ride home. So she goes and finds her friend. And her friend is like, no, I don't want to go home yet. So the dude she's making out with says that he'll drive her home. So she ends up driving him home. And they end up sharing a drunken kiss. And then it flash forwards, I think like 10 years. And her best friend and her new best friend, so there's 3 of them now, they all go to this auction for firefighters. And they're all bidding on, they're all bidding for each other's dates. I hope that makes sense. So her best friend bids on Mario for Maddie, and they end up going on a date, and it's about their story, and it's wonderful. I absolutely loved it. And then I tried really hard to read for Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It got recommended to me by my boss, and I'd heard a lot about it recently, so I really wanted to try it. I did not finish it. I think I read to page 60. I couldn't get into it. His writing was driving me nuts. And yeah, I couldn't do it. And I felt like absolutely nothing happened. Nothing happened. It sounded like a good concept, but nothing happened. So I couldn't. And then I read The Last Song by Nicholas Sparks, which I also gave 5 stars. As always, Nicholas Sparks never disappoints. Yes, I watched the movie first and I loved it, but the book lives up to the movie as well. I loved every second of this book. It was touching and you get to know the characters even better than the movie. Obviously, I always loved Nicholas Sparks, so this really wasn't a surprise that I loved this book. So, good review there. And then the last one that I tried to read that I couldn't was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I really wanted to love this book because I loved the Lunar Chronicles, and I thought that this one would be good because it went back to the fairy tale retelling thing. Although I also had tried to read Renegades. I read Renegades and Arch Enemies, and I had to push myself through both of them, and I hated them. So I was really excited to read this one because I thought maybe she was just only good at doing retellings. And this book was as bad as Renegades was. So I didn't finish it. I think I got to 13%. So not very far. Nothing happened. And then I read spoilers for it, and nothing really happened in the whole story. So not really disappointed about it. I gave it to Thirst for Already to trade in for more books, so that's why I don't have it anymore. I've come to the conclusion that the Lunar Chronicles was a fluke. I can't. I read the Renegades and hated it. Literally had to shove myself through the book, read the second one, and did the same thing. I loved the Lunar Chronicles, which is why I tried so hard with Renegades, but I just can't with this book. I'm DNFing this book. 13%. How sad is that? I don't want to get rid of it because it's such a pretty book, but I also don't want to be reminded of how Marissa Meyer's writing has gone down the toilet. It's a toss-up, but I will likely end up getting rid of it. And I did. I got rid of it. And then I read this monstrosity, The Mister by E.L. James. Honestly, I don't know why I bought this book. I loved 50 Shades when I first read it, and it introduced me to all my other, like, erotic-y-ish books. And then I tried to reread 50 Shades, and I couldn't. I got to the scene where he follows her to work, and she's finding the zip ties and duct tape and that stuff, and I gave up on it because I couldn't deal with her writing. Her writing has not improved. And there's even less of a story in this book. Basically, he falls in love with the maid. The maid is here as an immigrant and is on the verge of being deported. Yeah. Not going to tell you the rest of it, because if you want to read it, you will need to know, or you will want to find out what happens by yourself, because that's the only thing. But I didn't like it. And, yeah. This is my review. You guys can't see that. Okay, well, it's really long, so buckle in. I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. Not sure what to think of this book so far. The beginning was kind of confusing, and the homeless dirty girl. With the homeless dirty girl, and then we go into this annoying playboy, where did all the sex scenes go? I wish that the author would have waited chapters to switch between either the woman's point of view or the man's point of view, because it's kind of hard to keep up with this weird back and forth thing she's got going on. I love to hear both sides of the story in books when it's done right. This one was borderline in my opinion. Just so you know, there's probably spoilers in this, so if you don't want to hear them, wait until I pick up my last book that I read. 200 and some odd pages in, and there's so much fluff in this book, it's hard to read. I'm all about getting to know a character, but do we literally need to know how crazy this man is? Example. Tell her you're the fucking Earl of Travithick. No, why not? I will. Not yet. Why not? I want her to know me first. Know you. Spend time with me. That was a scene of him talking to himself. Can someone please tell me why things like this are necessary, other than filling in pages? I feel as though these 200 pages could have been pushed into at least 100, if not less, had there not been so much damn filler. Page 216. We've been transferred back into 50 Shades of Grey. Just looking at the page, and I'm back to reading that book. Email. I feel as though these chapters shouldn't be here. There is nothing to make us think that the chapter is over and moving into another one. For instance, he starts crying after she plays the song he made about his brother. End of chapter. And then the next chapter starts with her in the same point of view. In the same scene. Chapter 14. We finally get our first sex scene that isn't cut off as soon as it starts. Don't get me wrong. I can read and enjoy books without any sex in them. But when the book says it's erotica, I expect sex scenes. I've also decided I will not be keeping this book. I'm going to finish it and then return it to the store. It's not worth the money I spent on it. Let's recap here. 50 Shades. Anna's a virgin. The Mister. Maria, I think her name is a virgin. 50 Shades, there's a kidnapping. The Mister, there's a kidnapping. 50 Shades, there's a bathtub scene. The Mister, there's a bathtub scene. 50 Shades, there's a hidden room, but it's a bondage, like, red room of pain, as Anna calls it. The Mister, there's a hidden room, but it's for photography. The 50 Shades, Christian is rich. The Mister, Maxim is rich, except he's also like a lord. Does this author know how to write anything that isn't what she wrote the first time? At some point, there wasn't even a story anymore. It was just endless sex that we didn't even get to read because she basically censors the whole book. I'm not impressed. So there's my rant. If you feel differently, good for you. We're all entitled to our own opinion. I hated the book. And I'm actually on my way to return it when I'm done this video to buy a new book that I will hopefully enjoy because that book was crap. Okay. Sorry. The last book I read was Crash Into You by Ronnie Lauren. I finished this last night and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I will be continuing with this series until it either bores me or it's over. One of the two. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this book. I felt as though the beginning caught me a lot more than the rest of the book, and I'm not sure why. I guessed who the kidnapper and rapist was from the beginning. And what happened to be right. What? I guessed who the kidnapper and rapist was and happened to be right. So maybe that had something to do with it. I also felt as though I've read something like it before. I'm going to try and read the next book in the series to see if I like it before I decide if I'm going to continue with the series or not. So those are what I read this month. I read 18 books, and like I said, I am going to be reading another one today. I just don't know if I'll finish it, but I'm going to count it towards May instead of April. And I am 51 days out from my wedding, so not sure how much reading I'm going to get done. Hopefully I'll still be able to get a good amount done, because I don't have a lot of stuff to plan for my wedding anymore. It's mostly just paying for things. So yeah, that's my wrap up for April. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really hope you guys enjoyed my rant about the Mister. This wonderful book right here. So yeah, this book. Returning it to find a new one. I'll see you guys later. Bye.